I'm super excited for this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. Now, Brian and I, we've already been talking. We're catching up since our last interview. So for everyone out there, please look in our archives. We did an amazing interview with Brian Will not too long ago, to be honest, maybe 6 months, 8 months ago. It's been the last year, but he's already got a new book out that we'll talk about. But before that, Brian, since our last interview, what's new with you? And could you give a little bit of intro of your career, your background for the people that I guess I don't want to say are too lazy, but are, just going to dive straight into this episode and then go back to the other episode.
Yeah. Sean, I think you and I met when I had released my second book, The Dropout Multimillionaire. And I think you read it on New Year's Eve or something like that, which was funny. And you called me and we ended up doing the earlier podcast.
Well, I read it in one sitting. It was a great book.
Well, I appreciate that. That's music to the author's ears. Let me tell you, if somebody sits down and just reads your book, you're like, man, that must have been good. But my background real quick, 35-year serial entrepreneur. I've done like 10 startups. I have 2 VC exits, 1 PE exit. I still have 3 operating companies. One I'm probably going to sell this year next. I've written 4 books. 2 of those are Wall Street Journal bestsellers. I do consulting. I sit on city council in my hometown. I own a real estate company, a restaurant chain. I'm like ADHD, right? So I'm all over the board. I do all kinds of stuff. But I have really good people who work for me who manage everything, so I don't have to, and that's why my ADHD is a superpower, but that's another talk.
So with everything you're doing, can you also tell a little bit about this new book that was just released and why you wrote it?
Yeah, so this one is a follow-up to The Dropout Multimillionaire. And it is The Invisible Multimillionaire. If it shows it, there it is. And The Invisible Multimillionaire is kind of what am I trying to say? It's a visual of what you need to do if you want to scale your business, prepare for an exit, and create generational wealth. In fact, that's the title. Scaling your business, preparing for an exit, and creating generational wealth. Because if you're really going to get maximum value for your company, you need to be more on the operations back end side as opposed to the person that's out there doing everything. I tell entrepreneurs this all the time. People don't want to buy your business if you're the only person that ever talks to the customers, if you're the only one that drives all the sales, if you're the only one that understands the numbers, if you're the only one, because we call it the hit by the bus thing. You get hit by a bus and they're in trouble, right? So in order to get maximum value for a company, you need to begin pulling yourself out of the day-to-day. We call this the delegation phase, right? 4 levels of delegation. And if you can properly execute a delegation program and move yourself up to a 30,000-foot level, your business is infinitely more valuable. In fact, one of the things I've always done with my companies is, it's a running joke with people who work for me. I always tell them, don't ask me, I have no idea. Go figure it out. And I probably do have an idea, but I'm not going to hamstring them by telling them what to do. I want them to go figure it out and become better leaders within the organization, so that if I leave, I've got a good team members in place and somebody else can come in and take that business over, and it's easy to do. So the Dropout Multimillionaire turns into the Invisible Multimillionaire, which is a person who has properly delegated what they do.
Can you talk a little bit about how to go about delegating management? What are the first steps to that? Also, what happens when you are just starting a company, when you're doing every role yourself, and then as it grows, start bringing in people? How do you know what's the first thing to delegate or the second? What was the process for you with all these businesses that you've started?
The first problem that entrepreneurs have, and I fell into this in my first business, and it's why my first company crashed and burned and I lost everything, is they get a business that starts doing well, and as the business does better, they increase their personal lifestyle. And as the business does better, they increase their personal lifestyle. And at some point, they're burned out. They're working 60, 80 hours a week. But because their lifestyle is consuming all of the profits of the business, they don't have any money to put back into the business to start the delegation process, right? If you're going to build a business with the end result of potentially selling it one day, you need to keep your lifestyle at a minimum and keep reinvesting your money back into building the business and building the delegation phase and putting team members in place, because that will ultimately make you 5 to 10 times more money than the immediate gratification of, I had a good month, I'm going to go buy a new car, I'm going to get a bigger house, I'm going to buy a boat, I'm going to get a second home. Take that money and invest it in assets, people assets, so that you can begin to pull yourself out multiply your time, buy your time back, as it were, if you want to read Dan Martell's book, right? And then ultimately, you'll be able to sit at 30,000 feet, work part-time, and have a company 10 times bigger than if you're ever going to do it yourself, right? Now, the second problem is if you do that, the second problem most entrepreneurs have is that I call it live in a world of fear. I literally had this conversation. I was down with Kevin Harrington. I don't know if you saw those videos, right? The original shark from Shark Tank.
I didn't see the videos, but I mean, everyone knows Kevin Harrington, and I met him in person, and I'm actually taller than him, which is very rare for a guy that's 5'7". So
we had 15 entrepreneurs down there that did a collaboration book, right? More Paths to Profit, or Many Paths to Profit. And I was talking to a couple of guys that own businesses, and they're like, I can't hire people because I'm afraid. I'm afraid they won't do it as good as me. They won't do it as fast as me. They're going to mess up. They're going to scare off a customer. And I said, you are literally building a business in a world of fear. And as long as you live in a world of fear, you can't scale, right? You can't, because you're afraid. So you got to get out of that world of fear. And you do that by understanding that nobody you ever hire will ever be as good as you. And you have to be willing to accept that. And everybody you hire will screw up, and you need to be willing to accept that. And everybody you hire will cost you money when they screw up and when they do things wrong, or if you have to fire them and hire somebody else, and you have to be willing to accept that. Because the ultimate goal is to build an executive team that is badass and can do everything you can do, at least at an 80% level. But if I hire somebody that's 80% as good as me, and I can hire 10 of those people, I'm now 800% better than me. And they may not be as good at me at individual tasks, but my company will accelerate significantly over me trying to do myself. So don't increase your lifestyle if you're in the build phase, and don't live in a world of fear. Accept the fact that people will screw up. Accept the fact that it will cost you money, but keep your eye on the long term, the big vision. That's really the key to doing this.
You mentioned the delegation phase. When does the delegation phase end?
So I call this the 4 levels of delegation. And this is very similar to what I think Dan talks about. And the first is administrative. The first thing I see entrepreneurs doing all the time, well, I'm just going to go in and do the payroll. Well, I'm just going to go in and process the invoices. Well, I'm just going to go in and call the customers. That's administrative tasks. That's $25 an hour stuff. If you're doing $25 an hour stuff, you can't do $1,000 an hour stuff. So the first thing you delegate in your business is administrative tasks. I would even say the first critical hire is a personal assistant to take care of all the things in your life that are chewing up time that keeps you from being the most productive in your business or the most productive in your family, right? When we're building a business, we also don't want to have to forget the fact that we have a family. If you have a wife and children, they want you more than they want more money, right? So administrative assistant, first thing we delegate. Then we go to marketing and sales. That's 2 and 3, right? Marketing is a very specific skill set that if you don't know how to do it, you need to bring somebody in who does, because marketing will drive everything in the organization. So bring in somebody who's really good at marketing. And then sales. If you're the primary salesperson, God bless you, but you better build a sales team around you, because if you get sick or you can't work or you break your leg or something happens to you, your business is gone. No sales, no business. So you got to build a sales team. And then the fourth one, I call it the executive level, is the person that's going to run the company in your absence. And I always like to say entrepreneurs have an ego, so they don't want to give up the CEO title, but you can put in a good COO, a chief operating officer, allow them to learn how to run your company, leave yourself in the CEO title and manage from that 30,000 foot level, and put all the processes in place for tracking and management and meetings and all that type of stuff and reports and feedback. And you can be extremely effective that way while not being down in the details of what you do. I said earlier, I'm ADHD. I suck at details. Like, you give me 5 things to do, I'll do the first 5 minutes and then I'm, scanning TikTok. I can't get it done. I literally just sent 10 emails out this morning saying, do this for me, do this for me, do this for me, do this for me, to different people. And then I'm just going to wait for them to get it done, because I know if you're waiting on me to do it, it's not going to happen. In fact, those emails have been sitting in my inbox for a week, and I thought I would do it. I kept blowing it off. And finally this morning I was like, what am I doing? Let somebody else do that. So I fired them all off, and they're all responding, I'll get it. I got it. I'm like, good. That's what we need to do.
We'll talk about delegation there, but let's even go back earlier. A lot of our listeners, Silicon Valley startup founders, they're looking at it going, this is great if I had money to hire amazing talent, but all I got right now is equity.
Mhm.
What happens in situations like that where you may not be able to afford or get
Mhm.
even talent that can do 80%? Maybe it's, hey, I'll just learn on the job. I just came out of college. I'm interested because I see a big vision, a dream, but you have no idea, you have no
Don't
money.
get me
All you got is
wrong, and hear what I said. I said when your business is growing and you have the cash, don't spend it. Invest it back into hiring the talent. Almost every business to start, you got to do it all yourself. There's no question about that. You got to wear every hat. But as your business begins to get traction, you generate revenue and there's money available, you peel the money off to build the infrastructure and the team, not peel the money off to buy a new car, a new house, a new boat, or whatever the hell it is you think you want. Right. So, yes, you start doing everything. But as you grow, the most important thing you can do is build a team, not buy a car or a house or whatever it is that you want. My first business, I did exactly what I'm saying. We got bigger, we got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I had 80% of my business with one vendor. And when that vendor fired me, I had no cash assets. I had nothing to back me up. I was in debt up to my eyeballs because I had a Mercedes and a sports car and a motorcycle and 2 homes. And I was living the big life. My credit cards were racked up. And when the money went away, so did my lifestyle, and I lost everything. And it's because I did exactly what I'm telling you here. I didn't protect my back end. I just kept cranking my lifestyle up. So, big mistake I made. Don't do that.
Before asking about some lessons from the book on scale, I'm really curious there. How did you get over if the 80% of the business is gone, business crash, personal? I mean, there's founders here that have spent years building a company, we'll say
Mhm.
5, 10 years, put everything in, maybe even got divorced, lost everything, the company crashes. And especially in times right now where so many are struggling to raise the next round. How does one mentally get over uh an instance like that in their lives? How do they move forward to the next thing?
Yeah, I did a TEDx talk, a couple of them, and one of my TEDx talks is "Your past is not your future," right? And one of the things I talk about in there is I was 30 years old when the business collapsed. At the same time it collapsed, I found out my daughter needed open heart surgery. I hadn't made the insurance payment, so I didn't have any insurance to pay for it. Then we found out she was going blind in one eye. I lost my house, I lost my cars, I was down to zero. And I say in that speech, these are the times in your life when you have to sit back and ask yourself a few questions. You need to have that come to Jesus with yourself, so to speak, right? Who are you as a person? What are you going to do now? Are you going to give up? Or are you going to take another step forward? And I talk about the greatest secret of success. If you talk to almost any hugely successful entrepreneur who has had a failure in their past, and most, if not all of them have, it will tell you they just took another step forward. You just go one more step, just just one more step. It's like running a marathon or doing a triathlon or an Ironman, man. You focus on 5 feet ahead of you, not the fact that there's no way you can run another marathon and you've already done a 112-mile bike ride, right? You just got to go forward. And this is when you'll find out if you have the internal fortitude to be a successful entrepreneur. That's a harsh statement, but if you haven't got it, then you haven't got it.
Well, so going back to the book, there's a lot of lessons on scaling a business. Can you share some of those best practices, some of those lessons?
The book is focused a lot on the delegation phase. We talk a lot about that. And then the second half of the book, that's the scaling your business and preparing for an exit. And then the back end of the book is really about selling the business into private equity. And this is where, once again, we talk about make sure that you bring the right team in if that is your intent to sell the company. You need a good M&A advisor and not think that you're going to do everything yourself. It's almost like reverting back to when you started your business, you wanting to do everything. Well, now you're an entrepreneur and you've got money and you think, well, I'm a smart guy. I'm going to go sell my own business and do my own preparation work and build my own pitch book and do my own financial recasting. And the reality is you need to bring in somebody who's an expert in doing this. Like Jeff, my co-author, he does a deal a month and has for years. He's done 100 deals. You haven't done one yet. Why would you not use his experience? Knowing the players, knowing what they're looking for, knowing how to build the pitch deck, knowing how to answer the questions to get maximum value on your acquisition. And he tells stories all the time about, and I have one personally. I was working with a company and they had a PE firm come in and did an assessment, made him an offer, and they got all the way down to the 11th hour. And then PwC came in and found that their books weren't clean. Not that anybody intentionally did anything wrong, but there was just problems. And they lowered the valuation multiple 7 figures on the potential exit. That is something that a good advisor with a good team behind them would not have let slip. And even like me, when I went in and did the analysis, I'm like, why do your charts go like this? And then there's a spike here, like on expenses and revenue. Like, did your revenue jump 100% in 1 month last year? No. Well, did your expenses jump? No. Did your payroll? No. Well, if you'd been doing proper financial analysis, which is what I do all along, you would have seen that spike and realized less than a year later that there was a problem in the books. That's what good people do for you. You got to have good people working for you.
How important is it for a CEO to be able to read financials, create a pro forma, be able to read the P&L, balance, cash flow, all that?
Well, I would say how important is it for a CEO to understand how his business is doing? Right? I mean, it seems like a silly question, silly answer. So I tell people all the time, listen, if you're not a magician with numbers, then get somebody in your organization who is and has the ability to break those numbers down into understandable chunks, or what I call it the 5 to 10 core metrics in your business that drive top line, GPM, and net, gross profit margin and net margin. And if you track those 5 to 10 core margins or core metrics, you don't have to look at a 10-page spreadsheet, that's 4 pages deep. All you have to look at is the patterns within the metrics to see what's going on in your business. It's important that you understand those metrics, or that you have somebody on your team that understands those metrics and can give you really, really good advice. And I've looked at so many different companies, and I can tell you the majority of businesses, I would say in the $2 to $5 million range, don't have clean financials. They don't know how to read their financials. They have no idea what's going on in their business. Even from a sales perspective, they don't understand sales analytics and how to measure and adjust the things that they do in the sales process, which drives everything. You need good people to come in and teach you the numbers. If you're going to fail, it'll probably be because of the numbers. You didn't get it.
How does a CEO, how does one avoid the burnout of just the daily grind if they're putting in 60, 80 hours and it's just them right now and they don't have the revenue to hire and start the delegation process?
Well, unfortunately, that is the name of the game when you're a startup CEO. So you're going to have to put the work in, and you're going to have to build the business, and you're going to have to generate the revenue and the income so that you can start replacing yourself. And that's just the name of the game. If that's not something you want to do, then I'm just telling you, it's going to be tough, right? There's no way to be a part-time business builder if you really want to build something big and awesome. You're going to have to do the work until you can afford to bring somebody in to do it. I mean, you're just going to have to do it. Now, once you have the money, like I said, bring somebody else in to do it, and you can back down and do what you're good at and not spend all day wearing 10 hats.
So you get past the delegation phase and the company's growing, things are going great, and you're looking 1 to 2 years from now for that exit.
Mm-hmm.
How would preparing the company for an exit be different than just improving the operations or managing day to day?
So I tell people this, particularly if you get in up to about $10 million. And I've had this conversation with several companies, and I'll say, hey, Sean, what business are you in? And I'll say, well, I'm in the roll-off dumpster business, or I'm in the garage door business. And my answer is always, no, you're not. That is the product that you sell. But the business that you're in, if you want to go past 10 million, you're in the data business, because everything in your world will be dependent on data after this. You can build a company working 100 hours a week and killing yourself and just getting lucky and being good at some stuff. But at some point, you better have a really, really, really good set of data that you can use to analyze both historically and to build future programs. We call it reverse engineering your future goal setting. You got to be able to analyze that data. Data is everything. I promise you, Microsoft and Google and Facebook, they have so much data on you. They knew more about you than you probably know about yourself, right? They're not just up there guessing like, hey, I know, let's run an ad. right? No, it's data. Data is everything. So if you're going to scale past that $5 to $10 million mark, you better start learning the data. And if you intend to sell, you better learn the data, because PE acquisition companies want to see data. They want to know that you understand your business at a micro level. And that understanding is what allows them to 4, 5, 6, 10x your business, because all they have to do is build on the data that you've already got. So in fact, that's one of the first things I do with companies is we come in and start tearing their data apart, put it back together so they understand it, show them how to analyze it, and use that data to grow the business. It's all about data.
Can you dive a little deeper and maybe give a story or example of diving into a company and taking what they had and cleaning the data up, or explaining to them, or giving them kind of that North Star to go to?
Sure. I did a sales training program for a company, and I said, send me all your sales and marketing data. And by the way, when people hire me for sales training or sales management training, they usually hire me under the premise that sales is all they want done. And what they fail to realize is that sales is one part of the funnel. Sales is dependent on marketing. Marketing is dependent on budgeting. And then everything under that, under sales, production is dependent on sales. So sales is a middle piece of the funnel, but it's reliant on everything above it. So we have to start with marketing. We don't start with sales. If I'm going to tell you what's wrong with your sales department, we start with marketing, not sales, because I need to understand all the data behind sales. And so in this particular case, I went into the company and I said, break down all of your marketing into channel data, right? So I want to know how much you spent in every channel, what the results were, what the cost, lead acquisition cost, what the product acquisition cost, what's the average revenue per lead that gets generated. And we broke all that data down. And in this particular case, this is a company that had 32 marketing channels. And when I say marketing channel, it can be Google, Bing, it can be CPC, it can be, Angie's List, whatever it is. And when we were done with the data, I came back to this executive team and I said, do you understand 9 of your 32 marketing channels are losing money? I mean, a lot of money. And in fact, it represents 32% of your overall marketing spend. So all we have to do is cut out the 9 channels, because they had the data. They just weren't tracking it properly. All we have to do is cut out these 9 channels, take that 30% revenue or spend, pump it back up into the other channels, and you'll generate an extra $2 million in revenue without spending another dollar in marketing. Now, I came here to talk about sales, but I'm telling you how to increase sales right out of the gate. Your marketing's not working. And that's literally just a marketing analysis. Then we go down to the sales team. And in this particular case, we had 8 salespeople in this organization. And we found out that the bottom 2 salespeople were losing money. So they're taking all these leads, they're going out and trying to sell product, and yet they're losing money on an individual P&L basis. I said, if you fire the bottom 2 people, you'll push all those leads back up into the higher producing salespeople, sales reps, and you'll generate an extra $1 million in revenue. That's pure data analysis. I didn't have to teach them a thing about sales or marketing. All we had to do was break the data down, reprioritize the spend up in marketing, and then reprioritize where the lead flow went into the sales force. And sales are up $2 or $3 million. I haven't done anything on sales training yet. And people don't understand that, because I said most of these companies in this $2 to $5 to $10 million range don't know how to analyze data properly. They aren't looking at what's really, really important.
And with that, are there any other things? Because right now I could just see listeners going, wait a second, I got to check this real quick to analyze my business. Are there any other areas that when you come in these are the first areas we observe? These are normally hidden gems or skeletons, or however you like to call it.
Yeah, so I'll give you another one. So we then take the sales force and we break each individual salesperson down into what we call an individual profit and loss statement. So in theory, and I know there's one-offs here, but if you have 10 salespeople in your organization and you do $10 million of revenue, in theory, each person's doing $1 million of revenue, right? So now if I take those 10 people and I say each one's doing $1 million worth of revenue, but and what I have to do to get a profit and loss statement out of each one of those is I have to take all the fixed costs in the organization, not the sales salaries and the commissions or the cost of the wholesale cost of the product, but all the fixed costs in the organization, I have to divide it by 10. That means all the executive salaries divided by 10, the rent divided by 10, the utilities divided by 10, the vehicles divided by, everything's got to be divided by 10. And we assign all those expenses to each individual salesperson, right? You with me so far? Now, once we've added all that up, each individual salesperson has a fixed cost that they have to overcome, plus their salary. Then they have to sell product at a commission level, and they have to generate enough revenue at a high enough margin to cover their commission, their salary, and all fixed expenses. And what happens is at the end of the day, you've built 10 little profit and loss statements off each one of your salespeople. This is where I say, I've never gone into a sales organization where every single salesperson was profitable. Almost every time, some of them, they're losing money. So you say, okay, I said a minute ago, we could fire the bottom two and make more money. We can do that. What we can also do now is go back up into our fixed expenses and start seeing if there's a way to optimize what we're doing and our overhead costs. Because if I can lower overhead costs, then I lower the amount of money I have to assign to that salesperson, which makes them easier to get to a profitability mark. We're getting really technical here, Sean.
No. This is gold. This is gold. Keep going.
So if I lower the overhead, I lower the amount of money that salesperson has to cover. And now I've got somebody that potentially was break even who's now making a little bit of money. But again, when we talk about sales and sales management training, which is what a lot of people hire me for, what they don't understand is it starts with an entire look of the organization. I did a 360-degree, top to bottom, all departments, all expenses, all marketing, all sales, and all the way from the front to the back, top to the bottom, so that we can optimize everything to get ourselves in a position where salespeople can make the most percentage profit on every sale they make. So that's a key.
When you're talking to these companies, do you also give them a timeline for this? Because some of those things, yes, you just cut done, but others, the sales, maybe it's okay, you'd lose money, but with my training and that in 3 months, that person would actually become profitable, or we believe they would become profitable. So it makes more sense to keep them around versus cutting the fat right now.
And I'll give you the next step. Once we've gone through the numbers, we've looked at marketing, we've looked at sales, we've assigned individual P&Ls. The next thing I would typically do with the salespeople is I'd do sales calls, whether it's on the phone or whether it's out in the field or whatever, because I can very quickly identify what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong, and quickly identify how I can make them better at what they need to do. And if I can do that, then they generate more revenue along with all the other fixes we make. An entire thing, it's like a train doing 100 miles an hour. We got to go left, but we're going to start making small turns until we get that thing where we want it to go, right? And then it depends on how open the sales reps are to listening and how willing they are to learn. You know, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And if they don't, we either coach them up or we coach them out. That's kind of the deal, right? And then we'll replace them with somebody else who's willing to listen and learn, because salespeople can be trained to be good. I don't know that you can train people to be top closing animals, but you can train people to be good enough to make money for the company.
Now, with all this, going back to the book, writing it, did it reinforce your views of entrepreneurship at all?
It's the more coaching and consulting I do, the more I'm amazed that people in this $2 to $5 to $10 million range don't know what they're doing. And if they would just bring somebody in to help them, they would significantly increase revenues and profits. But entrepreneurs have egos, which are hard to overcome. And then when they do bring you in, sometimes they only listen 80% of what you say. So it's not a change in my view of entrepreneurship. It's the frustration part on my side from looking at your business and going, I can so clearly see what needs to happen here, because I've been there and done that. I've built companies. I've built sales organizations doing hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. It's very clear to me, but it's not clear to you because you've never done it, can't see it, and you're struggling with listening to me because of an ego problem, because you want to do it your own way or whatever. Those limitations you put on yourself are what's going to keep you from blowing your company out and going huge. So my biggest struggle is the fact that I can see so clearly what needs to get done and other people fight me on actually doing it.
For people out there looking for that coach, that advisor, that person to come into their company and give them an assessment, should they be looking for someone that has worked in corporate their whole career, that maybe sold a company for $1 billion, or should they be looking for someone that focuses just on Main Street? But how should they go about vetting or screening the team that they bring in?
Sure. So I like to say coaching/consulting, there are three types. There is mindset, which is what most of these people in the market are. They're just mindset guys. There is technical coaching, and there's tactical coaching, or technical and tactical consulting. So mindset, how are you doing? You can do this. I believe in you. What's going on? That's all mindset stuff. It's not really business building specifics. Technical consulting or technical coaching, the example I would use is, I want to build a gym. I need to know what type of equipment to bring in here. I need to know how to structure my sales, offers. I need to know how to do, how many people can I get in? That's all technical stuff around a gym or whatever product. Or if you're building software, I need a technical coach to come in and teach me how to, code something better and faster. And then there's tactical, and tactical is what I do. I don't know anything about the technical stuff in your business, but what I understand is profit and loss analysis, historical P&L, core metric identification, pattern recognition, reverse engineering, and I understand sales, and sales is sales. I don't care what your product is. I'm going to work with you on operations, which is very tactical stuff. We're going to make real changes to real operational systems to make a real difference in what you're doing every day. And if you'll do this, this, and this is how the bar moves forward, right? So whatever it is that you're struggling with in your business, that's how you vet the people you bring in. First of all, is it a technical problem you've got? Is it tactical issues from operations and sales? Or is it mindset? I'm just struggling mentally and I'm overworked and burned out and I need somebody to help me out here, right? I jokingly say, and I only jokingly say, so don't judge me here, I don't care how you feel. Go talk to a mindset coach. I'm going to tell you what you need to do to fix the sales organization. I'm going to tell you how to build a sales management program. I'm going to tell you what's going on with your P&L. That's my job, right? So first, figure out what type of coach consultant you need. And then second, make sure they've actually done what they're going to teach you how to do. And that is the biggest one that the biggest trap people fall into is hiring people who don't know what they're doing, have never done it. Like if you want to build a business, and I tell people all the time, I am a 2 to 30 million revenue company from the operations side, on sales, 0 to about 200 million. I say that because that's what I've done in the past. And I've had a very good success record with doing that. My track record is undisputable. I can help you do those things. If you want to build $1 billion company, that's probably not me. On the other hand, don't ask Elon Musk to come in and help you start coding your first project, right? Because that's not what he's going to do for you. So you have to find the right person in the right market, in the right niche, with the right skill set. Coaches, consultants are for a reason and for a season. The reason is technical, tactical, and mindset. The season is what they are good at, what they've done, and how they're going to specifically help you until you either move past them and need to get somebody else or, whatever.
With that, how would you know when you've outgrown that coach, whether it's the tactical or technical?
Technical is easy. If you're not asking him any questions anymore, then you don't need him, right? Mindset, if you're thinking of calling the guy and you're like, I don't want to call this person, you're done. And from a tactical standpoint, have you learned everything you need to learn? Is it effectively working in the organization? And do you think that you're ready to do it on your own? Typically, I typically do 6-month engagements with folks to get all the basics out and get things really set up and rolling.
And with that, is there we're about at time, any story that you can share from your book for our audience, or any key advice or takeaways that you'd like to share?
The number one reason entrepreneurs fail. So I did a little work with an organization up in Ohio that is an accelerator. It's a state university funded accelerator, right? And I'm talking to some of their entrepreneurs and residents. And in this particular organization, and by the way, I just joined the executive board of Tech Alpharetta, which we're changing to the Alpharetta Tech Village. So we're kind of doing the same thing here, and I'm very excited about working with our 50 incubators. But if you join their accelerator, you have to go through a 6-week training program and go through all their classes and learn all the things. And then they vote on whether you're going to be allowed into the program or not. Now, you would think if somebody was accepted into the program, went through 6 weeks of training courses with all these exceptionally talented and successful entrepreneurs teaching them how to build their business, that they would have a very, very high success rate. And I asked him, what is your success rate? And he said 50%. And I said, it surprises me. I said, what is the number one reason that the other 50% failed? And he said, ego. They stopped listening. They thought they were smarter than us. They took some of our advice, but not all of it. It didn't work correctly. They got mad because they thought I should only be able to take half of your advice and it should work. And then they eventually fail. And it was ego and the inability to listen to somebody more successful than you got every single one of them. And that applies to everything we do. And it goes right back to what I said about me and my biggest struggle. If you hire me, I'm going to tell you what to do. If you do half of what I tell you, probably not going to work. So you got to listen. You got to check your ego at the door. Do you want money or do you want an ego? Do you want to build a huge company or do you want to say, I did it all myself? Nobody does everything themselves. Nobody. So check your ego at the door. Get good advice from somebody who knows what they're talking about. And your chances of success go through the roof.
Brian, that's fantastic. For your new book, where can people find it? Also, after this book, what's on the horizon for you?
The book it's on Amazon. It's called The Invisible Multimillionaire. Scaling your business, preparing for an exit, and creating generational wealth. Or on my website, brianwillmedia.com. Everything's on there with my books and my training programs and whatnot. And what's next for me, and we talked a bit about this before the show started, is all this one-on-one training that I do now with organizations. I am actually building a video training module program, both in the sales side and the P&L analysis side, which is a 12-module course with a workbook that comes with 6 follow-up calls. You can go through the training yourself, give it to your sales organization, make them fill out the workbook stuff, get them on the right track, then do the sales training calls with me to hone it into your specific product or service. And as I end all my stuff, I can make you better. That's the deal.
Fantastic. We'll have that information in the show notes. And for our audience out there, I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley podcast. I'm an investment banker focused on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and go to our website, thesiliconvalleypodcast.com, for all our archives and what we're up to. And with that, Brian, thank you for another amazing interview. And we got to get you on again in the future. So with
Sean, I love it. I love being on these shows with you. They're awesome. Your audience is my favorite type of people.
Thank you. All right. And with that, Brian, once again, I want to thank you for being a guest on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast.